Welcome then to Varese in Italy and the World Sailplane Grand Prix final. How a sailplane works and just how quickly they can fly without an engine is something we'll be taking a look at. But for now, let's immerse ourselves in the world of gliding in Bella Italia. These 20 pilots are the sport's creme de la creme. They're battling over 8 days for the World Grand Prix title. The sailplanes are winch launched up to about 1,000 meters above the ground and then glide majestically through the air. Gliding means reading nature precisely, to be able to see where thermals are building up and then to make best use of them. The venue for the gliding Grand Prix is Varese, right on the banks of the Lago di Varese, 55 kilometers from Milan. Maximilian Sailplane from France is the newcomer among the experienced pilots. The 21-year-old Frenchman is making his World Grand Prix final debut. Sailplanes have no engine, but they do have little aids. Maximilian shows us which ones they are.
So we put water into the wings to increase the total mass of the glider, because the heavier the glider is, the better it glides, especially at high speeds, which is very important when the weather conditions are good. If the weather starts to deteriorate and especially the thermals get a bit weak, we can dump all the water or some of the water using a handle that's in the cockpit, and we can dump all the water in 3 or 4 minutes. So this is the cockpit of my glider. So it's a one-seater, as you can see. So yeah, we have to wear a parachute during every flight in case of an emergency, if we have to evacuate the glider during the flight. But of course, unfortunately, I've never had to use it, and I hope that's never going to happen. So here we have the different instruments we use during the flights. So this one, for example, is the airspeed indicator, so it tells you how fast we're flying. It's in kilometers per hour, so right now, of course, we're at 0, and the maximum speed we can fly at is this little red line, which is 290 kilometers per hour. The usual speed would be between, let's say, 100 and 100 and 200 kilometers per hour. This little screen here is a computer, a GPS that we use during the flights to have a map of the area we're flying. With this, we can start a turn by putting it to the left or the right. It moves the ailerons that are on the wings. And then, if we put it back or forth, we can put the nose down or the nose up and accelerate or slow down. Then there's also these two handles that are used during the flight. The blue one is what we call air brakes. So when you put them down, it pulls out those brakes that are on the wings and enables you to slow down the glider or increase the sink rate. So then there's these that are flaps that we use to basically adjust the wing to different speeds. And that's basically how we fly the glider. So this is the position we have during the flight. Of course, the canopy is closed. And as you can see, there's not a lot of space, because it's like a Formula 1 car. The bigger the cockpit is, the more drag it creates. So we try to have as narrow as possible a cockpit for performance reasons. But it's still fairly comfortable for a few hours flight. So.
Maximilian and the other 19 pilots will be sitting in a tight yet cosy cockpit. Over the 8 days of competition, they'll fly about 200 kilometers, which will take them around 2 hours. In the pilot's briefing before racing gets underway, they're provided with various data, like GPS coordinates that they have to fly to. Here in Varese, it's between 3 and 4. There's no chance of them cheating, as every glider has a GPS device that records its position every second. Of the competition with 2 days to go, and there's a minor sensation in the air. The youngest pilot, Maximilian Sailplane, is in the lead. A look at the standings shows that Maximilian has 26 points. His countryman Christoph Ruch is on 25, and multiple world champion Sebastian Kała from Poland is in third with 23. The sailplanes are winched up and take position close to the starting line, from where they have to fly to 4 different points. In doing so, the pilots have to fly at predetermined altitudes and speeds. The graphic shows the starting line. From there, it's off to the right about 55 kilometers to the first GPS coordinate in Baita. Afterwards, the pilots turn left before flying over the airport in Varese on their way to the next coordinates in Livorno. From there, it's back towards Erba and the last coordinate 5 kilometers from the finish. The total flight distance 208 kilometers. The starting line is 5 kilometers long and gives the pilots the chance to find a good position. They're given a countdown and then off they go. The Australian Tom Claffey has got off to the best start and is leading the group, but he also has to seek the best routes and the others can follow him. See from the graphic, the group has split. A few pilots, including Maximilian Size, go for the thermals close to the mountains, but the group then slowly bunches up and flies in the direction of the first GPS coordinate. The pilots have to be on watch at all times and communicate on the radio. It's the only way to prevent collisions, which can of course be fatal. Though the pilots have a parachute, none of them wants to risk an accident. In the race, it's essential to recognise and then take advantage of the best thermal lift. The right tactics are also decisive, especially with so many pilots competing.
In the race, it's essential to recognise and then take advantage of the best thermal lift. The right tactics are also decisive, especially with so many pilots competing. The races we take part in are similar to Formula 1 races, all about crossing the finishing line first. The question is, who's at an advantage? The ones currently in the lead, or those flying further back, but higher up? Remembering one's physics lessons at school, you can work out that with greater potential energy, a pilot has height and can turn it into speed and then overtake. This means that in the final uplift, and therefore before we head for the finishing line, you try to be the highest in order to catch up with the ones in front, or overtake them to cross the line first.
Die größere Höhe umsetzen in Geschwindigkeit und dann möglichst vor dem anderen über die Ziellinie zu fliegen.
We're therefore now competing in the World Grand Prix with a maximum of 20 pilots, and you have a big chance of getting to the front if you keep your wits about you. Being aware of nature, how a cloud builds up, or if there are no clouds, where there's perhaps a thermal, and then how good are the other pilots.
Einmal zwischenmenschliche Beziehungen aufzubauen während so einer Woche Wettkampf.
It's the mindset that you have to have, and also when flying, you have to recognise which pilot has the better ideas in certain weather conditions and can read them and use the opportunity to quickly gain height and then gain an advantage and in a position to overtake the others. In gliding, there's something else that you always have to remember, namely that it's a dangerous sport.
Es ist ein gefährlicher Sport. In
Formula 1, the drivers exit the pit lane, no matter whether another driver is approaching or not. But we can't do that in our sport. We have to be, put it this way, chivalrous, as we'd otherwise collide, and then both planes would be impossible to fly. And whether our parachutes would save us is another question. It's why I like the way we treat each other. We're really fair sportsmen, and as soon as a dangerous situation arises, which is quite possible, we talk to each other. on the same radio frequency, and we can communicate, and it's something that also happens.
Ganz faire Sportsmänner, und sobald eine gefährliche Situation entsteht, die durchaus mal entstehen kann, aber wir reden dann miteinander. Wir sind auf der gleichen Frequenz, wir können uns verständigen.
Back to the race, and there's only 5 kilometres to the finish, and 5 pilots are in the bunch. They include Maximilian Sais and Sebastian Carwa, but it looks as though the Frenchman is flying towards his second win in the Grand Prix final. He's using the tactic of launching himself out of the thermal from high up. He's the first to leave the thermal and prepares himself for the final dash to the line. The question is, can any of the other pilots catch him? Well, it's close, but the 21-year-old does it. He crosses the line in 1 hour 40 minutes, but with not much to spare. The second place pilot finishes 11 seconds behind him, and the third comes a further 15 seconds back.
Yes, very, very close. As you've probably seen, we're a couple of gliders who finished in less than, I'd say, 30 or 40 seconds. So it was very close. We were almost all together until the last thermal. We're just a bit of difference in altitude, and I was actually below, I think, 4 or 5 other gliders, and I just gambled on leaving the thermal first and just pushing very hard from the beginning on, and it worked out. Because I was just at first, I was a bit lower than the other guys, but I was just flying really fast and a bit ahead of them, and they weren't able to catch me, so it was a lot of fun. It'd be the first competition in my life that I won, so I'd be happy. And it's the first competition I do at this level, so I'd be very, very happy. But I prefer not to think about it for the moment. I'm just focusing on next day and try to do my best every day. Try to be a little bit better than them. And that's what's really hard in this race, and it worked today, but we'll see in the next days. Every day I think, well, today I'm going to make a mistake, they'll all come ahead of me and that'll be it, but it seems like for the moment I'm still in the game, so it's starting to get a bit tense, yeah.
First, once again, Maximilian Sais with 36 points, but countryman Christoph Ruch is right behind, followed by Sebastian Carwa, Roman Racek and Giorgio Galetto, just to name the top 5.
Get ready for the world's most iconic BMX racing series.
Let's see how things go out as we get ready for the gate call.
Where the best racers will push themselves to the limits.
So the gate comes down, it looks like a strong start.
Witness the quest for ultimate glory.
We're battling with each other all day. We're going 100% every single lap.
Mariana pulls up right at the line. It looks like Mariana Perron takes the win.
And the crowning of champions. UCI BMX Supercross World Cup 2016 on Edge Sport. This May, the world's best surfers will gather on the beautiful beaches of Rio de Janeiro for another incredible World Surf League contest. A phenomenal location for a monumental event. Witness the electric atmosphere and the intense surfing rivalries as the battle for the world title continues. World Surf League 2016, OE Rio Pro, Women's Pro, live on Edge Sport this May. It's time for another round of wild rallycross action. Join these supercar beasts.
That was a display of masterful car control.
And witness the incredible power, the intense speed.
Unbelievable! Can't have enough of that.
As the world's best drivers race harder than ever.
That's how you dream of winning.
FIA World Rallycross 2016 on Edge Sport.
It's the penultimate day of racing, and the weather is definitely not the taste of glider pilots. No sun, bad visibility, and even some light rain. But they've all got their sailplanes in position. However, at about 3 in the afternoon, the announcement's made. There is to be no racing. That, however, gives us the chance to find out how gliding started life. Riccardo Brigliadori takes us on a little journey back through time.
They have a beautiful picture from the starting of gliding. So we can see here first pictures of the first flight belonging to Otto Lilienthal on the last century, of course. These are one of the first flights, and you remember Otto Lilienthal was the father of all our glider pilots, of course. Then we have first pictures of brothers Wright on the first flight. I personally belong to a family who was involved in gliding since a long time. My uncle was starting in 42. My father was starting in 52 at 14 years old, and we are lucky that we have a nice picture here of my father when he was 14 starting gliding on a Canguro, which was an Italian glider. Then it was introduced a new law which permit people to start flying only at minimum of 16 years, and it is what I did. But since the 92, we didn't have a logger, so we have to demonstrate to overpass the right turning point with pictures coming outside a camera installed on the glider. And here is an example of how we have to overpass that turning point, and from the glider we have to make a circle exactly on the vertical of this point and make a picture. Now every pilot uses this little PC, little computer that are able to record with the GPS all the history of your flight and the altitude also.
Well, it's decision day. Who'll win the Grand Prix final? Can anyone knock the Frenchman off the podium, or will the 21-year-old make a mistake? Today's task is as follows. The start will be as usual in Varese. Then the pilots will head off 61 kilometers in the direction of Roncola, from where they'll continue to Moros and then on to Erba, 36 kilometers away. Then they turn for the finish, a total distance of approximately 195 kilometers. Maximilian Seitz is nervous, and the world's best pilots are breathing down his neck. Above all, the multiple world champion Sebastian Kawa from Poland. The 43-year-old wants to go on the offensive on the final day of competition.
You have to be very precise in what you are doing. This is no room for even minor errors. If you look at the results of this competition, we're losing with 2 seconds. In a flight that lasts 2 hours, you lose only 2 seconds. It's a fraction of a promille, I think. And this is really requiring a lot of preciseness in your piloting and what you are doing in the glider. This is a really good feeling to be in a glider, and when your things are going well. When you find nice lifts, when you find yourself finally in front of others and you're happy. Then it comes that you're fascinated with the landscape, with the surroundings. And with the age, I've been flying for more than 20 years in the competitions now. I have won 21 medals in it, in the highest level. And then the fascination is with concurring in gliding. So rivalry is the most important thing for me now.
The weather conditions for the final day of competition are not perfect, but then at about 3 o'clock the sun comes out and the pilots go to the grid for the final. Maximilian Seitz has to finish at least 6th, otherwise he'll lose his position as leader, but the others will certainly have a word to say. The German Uli Schenk gets off to a fantastic start and is leading the group, but the thermals are relatively weak, which means the group starts to split. All eyes are on the 21-year-old Frenchman, who is now under enormous pressure to find a good thermal lift to get some distance under his belt. But how is the thermal formed?
First of all, thermal means that the air warmed up by the sun rises and is generally only about 1 degree warmer, 0.8 degrees, than the surrounding area. And then we use the rising air like a bird of prey. And obvious for anybody out walking who looks is that we circle upwards in the rising air.
Well, in the graphic we see most of the pilots have decided in favour of the ridge uplift, and only a few are trying to fly into thermals over low-lying land. However, looking at the cockpit camera, we can see that the weather is changing. Visibility is getting progressively worse and the sun is no longer penetrating the cloud cover. For sailplane pilots, this means the thermals are getting weak. The pilots can no longer rise and are losing heat and speed. It's becoming increasingly obvious the pilots are having their difficulties to reach the Finnish airfield. Some of them are now turning around, still trying to find thermals off the route, but they're not sufficient. And now the first pilots are searching for alternative places to land. They can be other airfields or, in an emergency, a field in which a landing is possible. Here is the crucial moment. The budding Grand Prix final winner from France has to give up. It's safety first. He turns around to land at another airfield. Maximilian knows full well no points for him on the final day of racing. The question now, will any of the pilots make it to the finish? Sebastian Coe, who right up to the last minute tried everything he possibly could, he also has to give up. He just about makes it to a suitable field. At that point he has to be picked up, whereby the sailplane has to be de-rigged, the wings being removed. But Sebastian Coe has also failed to catch up the points deficit after landing in the field. Still pilots in the air, but from the altitude it's obvious they're on their way down. And we've got a sensation. None of the 20 pilots were able to add to their points tally.
Everybody is 0 point. Yeah, it was. We were quite sure at 70% of this race we understood that maybe no chance to come back for everybody. So 0 point, and Max is the new winner. Congratulations to him. He flew really well.
In the meanwhile, the spectators in Varese are waiting for the pilots to return slowly one by one from the other airfields. France's Maximilian sized 2, his first ever FAI World Sailplane Grand Prix Championships, and he's walked off with the win. Here is the new world champion.
Yeah, well, I just learned it when I was landed in Alzate. First, I didn't really know what the other pilots had done, but then when I learned from a friend who was looking at the tracking that they all landed out, so I knew it was okay. Especially at the end, it was, well, you can see all those clouds came over, and then basically stopped all the thermals and the ridges didn't work, so yeah, it was very hard. But it was fun. Probably bring the glider back to the trailer, rig it down, and then party all night. Probably. Well, I'm gonna celebrate the fact that I'm world champion now. I didn't think that was ever gonna happen, so it's pretty perfect. Well, I'd done one junior world championship a few years ago, but that didn't work out as good as this championship, so it's the first time I do a really good thing at a big championship, so it's new to me and it's a great feeling.
The new champion leaves his sailplane to head for the bar. The 21-year-old really has earned a nice cool drink. 8 days of competition against the world's top glider pilots. Not an easy task, but he's won, and in doing so has shown that he's very talented indeed. We'll be hearing a lot more from him in the future. And so confirmation of those results. Maximilian Reis takes the win, his compatriot Christoph Ruch second, and Poland's Sebastian Karwa third. So the young Frenchman's face says it all. The wind hasn't fully sunk in yet. It will take a few days, but then he'll realise the magnitude of his achievement, and perhaps then he'll take another look at those pictures.